The day she married the poorest mountain man in the region, the valley seemed to hold its breath, as if even the wind knew something the people did not. Her wedding dress was simple, her hands trembling not from fear but from the weight of every whispered judgment that followed her through the narrow, dirt road leading into the mountains. People believed she had ruined her life. They believed she had chosen hardship, isolation, and quiet suffering over comfort and safety. What none of them could see was that the mountains had already begun to shift, and the path she stepped onto that day would lead far above the clouds, into a truth so hidden that even time had tried to bury it. Before the story goes any further, take a moment to pause. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people the world overlooks, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Wild West Tale. Stories like this exist because hearts like yours still listen. She had grown up in the valley below, where life followed predictable lines. Families were measured by land, cattle, and reputation. Futures were planned early, often decided before love ever had a chance to speak. When she was young, she believed she would live a simple life. Maybe marry a tradesman, raise children near her parents, and grow old watching the same hills she had always known. But life has a way of cracking open when grief arrives uninvited. After her parents passed within the same winter, illness taking one and despair quietly claiming the other, she was left with a house full of memories and a town that no longer felt like home. People pitied her, but pity has a sharp edge. It reminds you daily that you are alone. The mountain man had lived on the edge of the high ridges for as long as anyone could remember. Some said he was born there. Others claimed he had wandered in after losing everything. He owned no land in the valley, no wealth, no standing. His clothes were worn, his cabin old, his life quiet and withdrawn. Children whispered stories about him, and adults spoke his name only when necessary. He worked when work came, carried supplies through dangerous passes, and vanished back into the mountains before dawn. To the valley, he was invisible until he wasn't. When she first met him, it was during a storm that turned the road into mud and fear into something physical. Her wagon had broken down miles from town, and night was closing in fast. He appeared without warning, steady and silent, helping without questions, without expectation. There was no charm, no attempt to impress, only presence, only action. He got her safely home and disappeared before she could even thank him properly. That should have been the end of it, but something about that quiet strength stayed with her long after the storm passed. Their paths crossed again and again, not through chance, but through the slow gravity of shared loneliness. He fixed what was broken without asking for praise. He listened without interrupting. He never spoke of himself unless asked, and even then his words were careful, chosen as if they carried weight. Over time, she realized something unsettling. Around him, the noise inside her quieted. The grief softened. The future no longer felt like an empty stretch of days. When he asked her to marry him, there was no grand promise, no assurance of comfort. Only honesty, only effort, only a life offered as it was. The town reacted exactly as expected. Friends warned her. Neighbors judged her. Some were kind but doubtful, others cruel but honest. They said she deserved better. They said she would regret it. They said love was not enough to survive the mountains, but she had already survived worse than poverty. She had survived loss, and she knew that safety without meaning was its own kind of prison. So she married him, not because he was rich or powerful, but because he was real. Life in the mountains was harder than anything she had known. Winters were long and unforgiving. Food had to be earned daily. Every task demanded patience, strength, and humility. The cabin was small, the nights cold, the silence vast. There were moments when doubt crept in, moments when exhaustion pressed so hard it felt like it might break her. But each morning, the mountain man rose before the sun, working not just for survival, but for her. He learned her habits, her fears, her quiet joys. He carried her burdens without making them feel heavy. Slowly, the mountains stopped feeling like a punishment and began to feel like a refuge. Yet there were mysteries she could not ignore. Certain paths he never explained. Certain days when he left before dawn and returned after dark. Marked not by dirt or sweat, but by a strange calm, as if he had been somewhere untouched by struggle. He spoke to the mountains like they were listening. He knew weather before it arrived, trails no map recorded, and stories of the land that sounded older than memory. When she asked, He would smile softly and say that some truths reveal themselves only when the time is right. The turning point came during a season when the valley below suffered. Drought dried the fields. Livestock died. Families began to leave. The town that once judged her now struggled to survive. She watched the smoke rise from distant homes, heard the echoes of hardship carried by the wind. It hurt to know that people who had turned away from her were now in pain. She asked her husband why the mountains remained green, why water still flowed clear where they lived. That was when he finally decided it was time. The climb began before sunrise. They moved higher than she had ever gone, beyond familiar trails, beyond fear. The air grew thin, the world below shrinking into silence. When they broke through the clouds, she felt as though she had stepped out of time itself. What lay before her was not a myth, not a dream, but a hidden kingdom. Carved into the high ridges, protected by mist and memory, terraced fields glowed with life. Waterfalls fed clear rivers. Stone structures stood in quiet harmony with the land. This place had been preserved, guarded, and forgotten by the world below. Her husband was no longer just a mountain man. He was a guardian, descended from those who had sworn to protect this sanctuary. When the world grew greedy and cruel, wealth here was not measured in gold, but in balance, knowledge, stewardship. The reason he lived as he did, poor by valley standards, was because true abundance was never meant to be displayed. It was meant to be protected. She wept, not from shock, but from understanding. Everything she had endured, every judgment she had faced, every quiet sacrifice suddenly had meaning. She had not married poverty. She had married purpose. What followed changed more than just their lives. With her compassion and his wisdom, bridges were built between the hidden kingdom and the suffering valley. Water was guided carefully. Knowledge shared without exploitation. Help given without humiliation. Slowly, life returned to the land below. And the people who once mocked her began to see what they had missed. Not a secret kingdom, but the truth that strength often wears humble clothes. As years passed, the story spread, though never fully. The mountains remained selective about who they revealed themselves to. But those who came seeking power found nothing. Those who came seeking hope found more than they expected. And she, once a grieving woman judged for her choices, became a quiet symbol of courage. Not because she rose above others, but because she chose love when it was hardest. If this story is touching something deep inside you, if it reminds you that kindness still matters, and that the world often hides its greatest treasures in plain sight, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Wild West Tale. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Before this story ends, we have one special request. Please comment below with a single word that this story made you feel. Your words help keep this channel alive and connected. In the end, she never needed the valley's approval. She had found something far greater than validation. She found truth above the clouds, love rooted in sacrifice, and a life that proved the poorest man can carry the richest soul. And sometimes, when the wind is right, the mountains still whisper her story, reminding the world that what we judge too quickly may be guarding miracles we are not yet ready to see.